Okay, great. Awesome.
Greetings, salutations, welcome back to Morbid Monday. I sound like garbage.
Because you're sick.
Yes.
It's not your fault.
So, this is a special episode today where my wife is going to join us
Hello, listeners.
and tell us all about.
Well, a lot of different topics,
Yeah.
but primarily today we're going to be talking about Mary Baker Eddy. Are either one of you truly familiar with the name?
I am not.
Okay.
I am, because Mary Baker Eddy, through the miracle of capitalism, has cost me quite a lot of money. And
Oh yeah, Yes,
If-
that's accurate. Very accurate. Mary Baker Eddy is the reason I'm in therapy in many ways.
Yeah.
Oh, cults. Cults.
Yes.
We're talking about cults today.
Yeah.
Hang on, let's go.
Broadly, yes. So, just kind of diving in, we're going to be talking about a lot of different things, but I'm going to give trigger warnings off the top. So, yes, cults, also child abuse and medical neglect are the topics for today. So, if anyone has sensitivities toward those, maybe just proceed with caution. So, today we're talking about Mary Baker Eddy. She was born July 16th of 1821 and died December 3rd of 1910. In her early life, her father, Mark Baker, was an active member of the Tilton Congregationalist Church, which is a branch of Calvinism. Mary Baker Eddy's father was in favor of slavery and happy to hear of Lincoln's death when it happened. Her father also had the reputation of being an easily riled and angry man. And she and her father reportedly had a very volatile relationship. Two sources, one independent and one from the church that she would eventually build, wrote in 1932 that her father sought to break Mary's will with harsh punishment, although her mother often intervened. In contrast to the strict religiosity of her father, Mary's mother was described as devout, quiet, light-hearted, and nurturing, and a benevolent spiritual influence on Mary in her formative years. That said, Mary Baker Eddy experienced periods of sudden illness. Those who knew the family described her as suddenly falling to the floor, writhing and screaming, or silent and apparently unconscious, sometimes for hours. Historian Robert Peel wrote that these fits would require the family to send Mary to the village doctor. And while the cause of her illness was unclear, biographer Carolyn Fraser wrote she believed the cause was most likely psychogenic, or what we would now largely call psychosomatic, in nature. According to the psychoanalyst Julius Sulberger, Mary may have been motivated by these fits, to have these fits in an effort to control her father's attitude toward her. And Fraser attributed the illness likely to a combination of hypochondria and histrionics as well.
Yikes.
So Mary survived several impactful deaths, including her brother, who left a large impact on her educationally, and her mother, her primary protector in regards to her father's more intense behaviors. Her first husband, who died 6 months into their marriage,
Jesus.
left her 6 months pregnant with her son, her only child, and she traveled back to her father's home by train and steamboat, where that only child, George Washington Glover II, was born. So the combination of these events, a difficult birth, and her frail condition all meant that she was cared for by a household servant, while a local woman, Mahala Sanborn, cared for her infant son. Her fiance, after that loss in childbirth, George, died shortly after her mother did, before they could marry, and then her father remarried. And Mary's new stepmother made herself clear Mary's child would not be welcome in the newlyweds' home. He was eventually taken in by the Cheneys in North Groton, New Hampshire, where he lived until age 11, before they took him west, effectively severing all contact with his mother.
My God.
Yeah.
Damn.
What deity did this poor woman piss off?
God.
Clearly.
Yeah.
It was a lot, really fast.
Really bad.
She then married Dr. Daniel Patterson, a dentist, in 1853. And on October 14th, 1861, Patterson wrote to a popular mesmerist, Phineas Parkhurst Quimby, who reportedly cured people without medicine, asking if he could cure his wife. Well, she waffled back and forth, and chose to try a water cure first, but a year later did travel to Quimby. And a week later, she publicly declared that she had been able to walk up 182 steps to the dome of City Hall, though the improvement was not long-lasting and she did relapse. Despite the temporary nature of the cure, she attached religious significance to it, which Quimby decidedly did not. He was incredibly anti-theist, and but she very much believed it was the same type of healing as performed by Jesus Christ, who, unlike Quimby, administered no medicine or material means in his healings. So from 1862 to 1865, Quimby and Mary Baker Eddy, at the time Mary Baker Patterson, had engaged in lengthy discussions about healing methods such as hydropathy, practiced by Quimby and others. That's that water cure thing. So they had lengthy discussions about hydropathy practiced by Quimby and others. She took notes on her own views of healing, as well as writing dictations from him and correcting them, quote unquote, with her own ideas,
The hell?
some of which possibly ended up in the Quimby manuscripts that were published later and attributed to him. Furthering the case that Eddy had likely written large portions of Quimby's manuscripts, Quimby was notably illiterate and would never have had the ability to write his own ideas down himself.
So she could just insert whatever she thought her.
Mm-hmm.
Was she a mesmerist? I mean, was she good
She
at it?
did do there. So there are some reports in her history. They're a little shaky of her doing seances, her doing mesmerism, her doing like some level of hypnotism. What the challenge there is that the Christian Science Church now has largely scrubbed anything that doesn't align with the cult ideology.
So unless you find
It's really hard to get access
So I'm
to
betting
info.
there was some table knocking early on.
Oh yeah,
Almost certainly, yeah.
I love how that just makes it seem like they were just like fucking a lot.
Oh, I didn't even go there. No, sorry. That's
Nope,
not what I
don't be
meant.
sorry.
Table knocking or table rocking being a spiritualism practice.
Yeah.
In which you're channeling ghosts. And
Right.
Yeah, like are the spirits with us? And then knock twice.
Right.
That's what I meant. Jeez. Y'all are dirty, says the smut writer.
So despite Quimby not being especially religious, in fact, he was fairly anti-religion, he did eventually embrace the religious connotations that Eddy brought to his work, since he knew his more religious patients would appreciate it.
Profit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Phineas Quimby died January 16th, 1866, shortly after Mary's father.
Toodaloo.
And then we come to February 1st, 1866, again, where we begin with the origin story of Christian Science, the eventual religion she would found.
Okay, here we go.
So on February 1st, while living in Lynn, Massachusetts, Eddy slipped and fell on a patch of ice. And a contemporary account by the Lynn Reporter stated this: Mrs. Mary Patterson of Swampcott fell upon...
Oh, sorry, where?
Swampscott fell upon the ice near the corner of Market and Oxford Streets on Thursday evening and was severely injured. She was taken up in an insensible condition and carried into the residence of S.M. Bubbier, Esquire.
What a name.
Esquire.
Nearby, where she was kindly cared for during the night. Dr. Cushing, who was called, found her injuries to be internal and of a severe nature, including inducing spasms and internal suffering.
She fall.
Well, I mean, people die all the time slipping on ice.
Yeah.
Because they go end over end and they just smack their head on the ice.
Yeah, hard.
Yeah.
So she was removed to her home in Swampscott yesterday afternoon, though in a very critical condition. When Georgine Milmean interviewed Dr. Cushing 40 years later, he stated that his records from the time documented that Eddy was in a semi-hysterical, intense emotional state, which subsided after she was given a small amount of morphine.
Yeah, that'll do it.
Yep.
You'll get calmer.
Yep.
Right,
I've
exactly.
been on morphine for a surgery. Like, oh my god. Yeah, you just kind of sit there
Dude,
staring at
yeah.
a wall.
Yeah.
Or at least I was catatonic when they gave it to me. I just never want that again. No, thank you.
On February 14th, roughly 2 weeks later, at the day after Eddy finished her care with Dr. Cushing, Eddy wrote to Julius Dresser, another patient of Phineas Quimby, claiming that her injury and her subsequent medical care had undone all of the healing Quimby had done before, and requested that he heal her. Dresser refused, stating that he was not enough to take on the burden of healing, and urged Eddie instead to spread Quimby's teachings further. Eddie would later credit her accident as her moment of spiritual revelation, the falling apple that led to her discovery of Christian Science. She
That's a Newton reference.
Yeah. Also, I like this. I like this thread because Quimby is a mesmerist who's not doing well fully because he doesn't have the credibility of the Christian culture of the area. So his wife and other people bring in some like religion into it. He dies, and then she already has the seed of, if I add Christianity to mesmerism, it is a sellable package.
Right. Now, what's interesting, just from like a little anecdotal perspective, later down the road, she would actually become incredibly antagonistic toward mesmerism.
Really?
Mesmerism and hypnotism
This
itself
bitch.
are as big of sins as you can get
So
in Christian Science.
that actually
Wow.
makes sense to me because if that's the root of your teaching,
Yeah.
then that means that those people who are experts in this can discredit you.
Correct.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So she claimed that after rejecting the medicines offered to her by her doctors, she opened her Bible 3 days after her fall and returned to full health after reading of Jesus healing the sick.
I wish you guys could see the look of bitch please on my face.
The sacred number reference. Pretty good. It's
Oh.
like you're literally trying to write a narrative comparing yourself to Jesus.
Oh yeah, but no, she's not Jesus, but she's like Jesus.
Yeah. It's like somebody whose stage name is like Moses Brown or something like that. You're just like, all right,
It's
man.
a good name though.
Right?
It's a great name if you didn't change it to be like a televangelist.
Oh, that's true.
There's not a televangelist called Moses Brown. I'm just making that up. But like somewhere there's like an Ezekiel something.
Yeah.
Like that's
Yeah.
It's certainly better than Tammy Faye Baker.
yeah.
Well, all right. So, at some point in 1866, after this event, she separated from her husband of now roughly 13 years and lived with 4 different families for varying amounts of time. All of those living situations ended in conflict of some sort with the hostesses, and 2 or 3 were reportedly violent.
What the fuck was
We
she
don't
doing?
know. We don't know what she was doing, but she was just historically known as being a bit of a bitch.
I ain't saying she's a man eater, but
Her friends during these years were generally spiritualists. She seems to have professed herself as a spiritualist and have taken part in seances. She was occasionally entranced and had received spirit communications from her deceased brother Albert.
for what?
Whatever.
Just spread
Her-
the message of Quimby.
Somewhat. Her first advertisement as a healer appeared in 1868 in the spiritualist paper The Banner of Light. During these years, she carried about with her a copy of one of Quimby's manuscripts, giving an abstract of his philosophy. This manuscript she later permitted some of her pupils to copy. Between 1866 and 1870, Eddie boarded at the home of Brienne Payne Clark, who was interested in spiritualism. Seances were often conducted there, but Eddie and Clark engaged in vigorous, good-natured arguments about them. Eddie's arguments against spiritualism convinced at least one other who was there at the time, Hiriam Crafts, that, quote, her science was far superior to spirit teachings. Eddie later divorced Daniel Patterson for adultery in 1873. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just kind of, so one of the things that clicked while you were talking is that one of the big things around spiritualism is that they couched it as a kind of science.
Yeah.
That it could think these like oh no, that's good. These ghosts and such could be like, because they were using devices, they were saying that this was more scientific than say witchcraft. Because
Right.
It was like measured.
Yeah.
And so like that's super funny to me is
As
that
the witches don't measure their spells.
yeah. But I mean like, and this is like a year before the Civil War ends.
Yeah.
So it's the perfect time.
Right.
Because we haven't hit the heyday of spiritualism yet.
Yeah.
No, but we're
Oh.
coming up on
We're
it.
coming
A
up,
sidebar I didn't write into my notes. Her son, Mary's son, was a member of the Union Army in the Civil War. That was one of the details I was able to hunt down. So Eddie divorced Daniel Patterson for adultery in 1873,
Can't imagine why.
and then she published her work in 1875 in a book entitled Science and Health, years later retitled Science and Health with Key to the Scriptures, which she called the textbook of Christian Science after several years of offering her healing method. There would be an eventual 400 rewrites and publications.
Yeah, that's a hell of a second, third, fifth, fourth, 400th edition.
Yeah. Yeah, and reportedly, I haven't ever gotten my hands on one. One of my siblings has their hands on a very early edition of Science and Health, and it is rife with spiritualism and like vaguely pagany type esoterical
This is
writings.
fucking nuts.
It is, and like the Science and Health I was raised on, is word salad.
Yeah.
It is just incredibly word salad.
You
It
told me a little bit about that.
it occurs to an uneducated person as being really, really high level, like a really high level of educated writing, simply because she uses large
Yeah,
words.
it's the Shakespeare treatment, right?
100%.
If I write it in modern English, it's like a story about dicks.
Right.
In many
Right.
cases.
Exactly.
Because we're using these big flowery words.
Right. It occurs as highbrow.
I've read several things that are very similar. Like they use about 15 words to say three, which is something that I myself am guilty of.
Yeah.
But
We're playing with mics today.
You
but
can see.
I can understand how and why, like certain sentence structures can come across as highbrow or like more educational than they are, when in fact they are speaking loudly and saying nothing.
Right. And a good example of this is actually the Christian Science version of the Lord's Prayer.
Oh yeah, you've told me this.
I have. And just for the listeners, I'm going to go ahead and do it. And you'll be familiar if you're at all any flavor of Christian or entered a church at any point in your life with the original. And then I'm going to go into it'll be a back and forth because in the church services it's essentially call and response, which is, cult 101.
Yeah, hold on.
Catholicism.
Yeah, let's. I'm gonna bring it just so we don't fuck this up because neither one of us.
Yeah, yeah.
Time.
So
Like,
you can just look up Lord's Prayer,
Yeah,
Lord's
dude,
Prayer
come
Christian
on.
Science. If you look up the Lord's Prayer Christian Science, the first one is the Christian Science Quarterly.
Oh my god.
I think he's looking up the original just to make sure he's got all the words right.
Yeah, here we
That's
go.
right.
Yeah,
So,
that's the one I grew up on.
here's
Okay. So you go ahead, first line.
Our
Who art
Father
in
who art in heaven,
Okay, so Our Father, Mother, God, all harmonious,
hallowed be thy name,
adorable one.
thy kingdom come,
Thy kingdom is come. Thou art ever present.
thy will be done. Okay,
earth
that
as
one
it is in
doesn't have
heaven.
it?
No, continue it.
Oh, on earth as it is in heaven.
Enable us to know, as in heaven, so on earth, God is omnipotent, supreme.
Give us this day our daily bread,
Give us grace for today. Feed the famished affections.
and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us.
So we use debtors, debt and debtors for that for some reason. And love is reflected in love.
And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil.
And God leadeth us not into temptation, but delivereth us from sin, disease, and death.
For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory. Amen.
Forever and ever. Yeah.
For God is infinite, all power, all life, truth, love, over all and all.
Good fucking God.
It's word salad.
That
It is like, what does that even fucking mean?
Go back to the very beginning. Father, mother, what? That's because
Let me
that
pull
was
it back
some
up.
pagan salad shit.
It was. It
Pagan salad.
pagan salad. That is a great phrasing there, Katie. So
Listen,
our Father, Mother, God, all harmonious.
that right there.
So Christian Science takes a non-gendered perspective on deity. They use he,
How remarkably
him.
liberal of them.
It really is. Like by all accounts, she's like a modern feminist. She's been accounted as being like one of the 50 most influential women in American history.
With the exception of the wackadoo.
She herself is the only woman to ever found a religion in the United States. So In January 1877, Eddie spurned an approach from one of her students, a Daniel Spofford. She then married another student of hers, Asa Gilbert Eddy. On January 1st, 1877, the two were wed, and she became Mary Baker Eddy in a small ceremony presided over by a Unitarian minister. In 1881, Mary Baker Eddy started the Massachusetts Metaphysical College with a charter from the state which allowed her to grant degrees.
The fuck?
In spring of 1882, the Eddys moved to Boston, Massachusetts Metaphysical College, and Gilbert Eddy's health began to decline around this time, with him dying June 3rd of that year.
This bitch is a Black Widow.
Aqua Tofana.
You beat me to it.
I just listened to that episode, guys. So yeah.
Aqua Tofana.
Seriously.
So they were married.
Does this taste like cyanide to you?
They, just to reiterate, they were married. She spurned an approach from one of her students in January, and in the same year, January 1st, she and her new husband, Asa Gilbert Eddy, were married, and then he died June 3rd of that year.
I wonder if the guy that was like one of her students just went, well, fucking, like, I wonder if he stayed with her or if he was like, oh, bullet dodged or whatever.
So there's not a whole lot that we really have left on him. I did do like a brief dot, and I just couldn't find any details.
Correct
really.
me if I'm wrong, but this is husband number 4.
3.
3, okay.
Husband number 3, engagement number 4.
Jesus.
Yes. So in 1879,
None of them longer than a couple of years.
no, none of them. In 1879, she and her students established the Church of Christ, Scientist, to commemorate the word and works of our Master Jesus, which should reinstate primitive Christianity and its lost element of healing. End quote.
That, to me, though, because we've had previous conversations about this, is one of the funniest things because, like, primitive Christianity, I'm trying to get closer, so I'm picking up thoroughly on here, but it's by people who don't really have a solid grasp of Judaism.
Right.
Nor do they really know anything about the spiritual practices of, say, pre-Jerusalem Semitic peoples.
Right.
Like, that's a new thing. Real, like, scientific history study in the vein of, like, archaeology and stuff is, like, brand spanking new. So there's very few people outside of, like, the Catholic Church who are, and maybe, like, the Orthodox and some Muslim scholars that are actively translating old manuscripts.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you're going to find them in Oxford, maybe.
Right.
You know, people who are, like, professional linguists.
Yeah, exactly. So just to reiterate, she had opened the Massachusetts Metaphysical College in 1881, and she taught approximately 800 students between the years 1882 and 1889 when she closed it.
Who decides to go to that college? Like, specifically, like, if there was a college that, like, what was it, Massachusetts?
Yeah, Massachusetts.
Metaphysical College.
Metaphysical College, yes.
Excuse me, I would also like to be a Jedi.
Yeah.
Please?
But it's not even the only one. There's a couple of those. Like, there's a couple of those in the... I'm going to turn my thing. Yeah, there's a couple of those in the United States alone. And then, like, I can't get this out of my head, though. Boston College of Metaphysics.
Oh, my God. Okay, so would you like to take a shot at how much she charged for tuition for each of her students?
Probably too goddamn much.
Definitely.
Like, so in today's money, it would probably be upwards of, like, I don't know, 30,000 for tuition.
So actually, you're in the very high ball. In today's money, even I pulled up an inflation calculator. Granted, we don't have records going back to the late 1800s. The earliest we have is 1913, but the amount that she charged per student was $300 at the time, which in today's money is roughly $10,000.
Yeah.
Which is how much I spent to become a massage therapist in trade school.
10,000 per what? Per semester?
Per student.
Okay, so
that's
period.
the whole year.
Yes,
or like
that is my understanding.
the degree, I
Yeah,
guess.
for you to get your degree in metaphysical studies.
Okay, that's not as bad.
Yeah,
'Cause,
that's
like,
not
my
as
last,
crazy as I.
yeah, my last semester of college was like $800.
Right.
Yeah, like
Now,
if you went to college and just took like 5 classes on metaphysics, it would cost you quite a bit. Like
yeah.
that. But
So the school was open between 1882 and 1889 when she closed it. And then in 1892, at Mary Baker Eddy's direction, the church reorganized as the First Church of Christ, Scientist. So that said, one of the biggest things about this story is that Mary Baker Eddy herself really abhorred the use of medicine in Science and Health. She talks about it all the time as being a form of mesmerism and hypnotism. It's a lie and error and um, malicious mental mind, like or malicious mesmerism, something along those lines. I forget the word salad exactly.
yeah, 'cause she thinks that everything is a placebo.
Yes, essentially. Like what it boils down to is that she believes that our physical bodies aren't real. Our spiritual bodies are.
I wish my physical body wasn't real.
Big mood. So essentially anything that impacts the physical body is superfluous. You could just pray about it. Use your spiritual body and you'll feel better.
You've ghosts in your blood. Go pray about it.
Pretty much.
Okay. So I can kind of understand where she would be a little bit spicy about medicine in
Mhm.
general because
Well, the time medicine was you have ghosts in your blood, go do cocaine about it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
but like considering her early diagnosis probably came with some sort of hysteria attached to it.
oh yeah.
And like there were like two
Mm-hmm.
temporary cures for hysteria back then.
Right. Well, and I'll say this like very minorly in a way that like I want a large portion of my work as a massage therapist and as a coach working with trauma is that a lot of presentations of physical issues sometimes do come down to a level of psychosomatic impact, that you have a level of emotional tension that is not being addressed, and then it comes out with muscular tension because there's only so many ways you can throw a ball. And like that is a thing. You can, on some level, if you address the internal scape, have an impact on the external scape. Anxiety is a great example of this.
Yeah, or like like phantom pain. We know it's
Right.
a real thing, and that's entirely mental.
Right.
But I mean, even that, part of the reason is because your brain is sending an impulse to a nerve it thinks it's still there.
Exactly. We've now actually accurately explained this with medicine and science. But so it all of that to say, like, it is somewhat like sense making if you ignore all the woo woo. Like it takes ignoring all the woo woo. But so in that vein though, she still had a significant amount of pain. And so there is quite a bit of controversy over how much morphine she used throughout her life.
I wonder what flavor of neuropathy this poor woman had.
No telling. But her biographers described her as a morphine addict.
That tracks.
Miranda Rice, a friend and close student of Eddy, told a newspaper in 1906, "I know that Mrs. Eddy was addicted to morphine in the 70s," which is the most just, a little LSD for the fun.
Especially it's funny because it's the 1870s.
Yeah, I was
Right,
just
yeah.
thinking.
Yeah. A diary kept by Calvin Fry, who was Eddy's personal secretary, suggests that Eddy occasionally reverted to, quote, the old morphine habit when she was in pain.
Gotta get a little nip of the good old morphine.
Right. Now, that said, Eddy did recommend to her son that rather than go against the law of the state, that he should have her grandchildren vaccinated. She also paid for a mastectomy. Yeah, she also paid for a mastectomy for her sister-in-law, hypothetically for something like cancer.
That's wild. Because
Um,
this is the late 1800s.
Right.
So, super dangerous.
Yeah.
And also, she doesn't, I wonder if this, so, right around now is when, that's becoming safe.
Yeah.
For the first time ever because
Right.
of Lister.
Right.
because of like antiseptic.
Right.
So like, I wonder
It's also
if they
like
if they took.
shockingly drastic for the time period too.
Yeah, it's like it's a
like-
Hail Mary. Like we're
Mhm.
doing this
Yeah.
because you're gonna die otherwise.
Right. So, Eddie did also use glasses for several years for very fine print, but later dispensed of them almost entirely, claiming she could read that fine print with ease, and some doctors' reports corroborate this. Toward the end of her life, she was frequently attended by physicians. She died of pneumonia on the evening of December 3rd, 1910, at her home in Newton, Massachusetts. Her death was announced the next morning when a city medical examiner was called in. She was buried on December 8th, 1910, at Mount Auburn Cemetery in Cambridge, Massachusetts, in an open-air mausoleum.
This is a joke just for you. Now, Mary Baker Eddy, where are you from?
Oh my God. Massachusetts. Cambridge, Massachusetts. I've been here the whole time. So that's for the dropout crowd. Shout out to horses. What do you know, though, of the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act of 1974?
That's you, bud.
Yeah, so this is how I actually learned of Christian Science. Thank you. You're turning the mic towards my mouth so it would pick up.
Yeah.
So
your line was flat.
My line's pretty flat.
We're figuring it out, guys.
So this is how I learned about this religion to begin with.
Yeah, prior to meeting my crazy ass family.
Yeah, there was a made-for-TV movie in the 90s about the child's death that started this law.
Yeah. Because
the parents were not necessarily like charged with anything, but like they in the movie anyways.
Mm-hmm.
What happened is that they got shunned by their congregation because like they tried right at the end to give medicine, but it was too late. The kid died.
Yeah.
And then like they got, so not only were they the national like you killed your child family, but also they got shunned by the congregation because they had tried to use medicine, and then they came out against the religion.
I'm such a pop culture monster because my brain immediately went to like the Grey's Anatomy episode of this.
Yeah.
So just to give you like to yes and your statement. So that was the death in 1967 of the 5-year-old Lisa Sheridan of pneumonia. She lived in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, and was the first of several in the 20th century known within the church as, quote, the child cases. Her mother was convicted of manslaughter and sentenced to 5 years probation. And it was after this prosecution that the church began lobbying for religious exemptions to child abuse.
Which should never, ever be a thing. There should never be a religion that's allowed to like beat their kids on religious grounds. Fuck that.
So we do have a hero of sorts in the person who created the Child Abuse Prevention and Treatment Act, and that is Senator Walter Mondale, who would later be the vice president to Jimmy Carter.
That's right. Mondale is like kind of a big deal. He does some kind of sketchy political things, but like Carter in general in his presidency does very little that's objectionable. There's a couple of pretty big things. Yeah. But like Mondale's famous.
Yeah.
Like
So it was supported by various co-sponsors in the U.S. Congress, and the act was signed into law by President Richard Nixon. Now we have two more.
Yeah, early. Yeah, just because
we have two more
Katie
bad guys.
Like a weird thing. Early Nixon does a lot of good.
Yeah.
He just gradually goes crazy.
On the topic of later Nixon, though, John Ehrlichman and H.R. Haldeman, these individuals were President Nixon's closest advisors and lifelong Christian scientists.
Oh my God. Let's fucking go.
They used their influence to persuade the Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, now known as the HHS, to include a religious exemption clause in the federal regulations. Both men were later jailed for their roles in the Watergate scandal.
Absolutely. That's why when you started saying their names, I'm like, these are the fucking guys that set up the flashlight, dude.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fucking let's go.
So, and the Secretary of the HEW, the Health, Education, and Welfare, was at the time Caspar Weinberger.
Oh, shit. That's a name.
But he was persuaded by Ulrichman and Haldeman to make that religious exemption. And then the Christian Science Church lobbied for these provisions, which provided a legal shield for parents who chose spiritual treatment, prayer, over medical care for their children. The requirement in the federal regulations forced states seeking federal funds to adopt similar religious exemptions in their own child abuse statutes, effectively giving the church the, quote, whole enchilada in legal protection at the state level.
Fuck all of that.
Weinberger still comes up around autism stuff because of this. And oh my god, that's so, like, this is a real who's who of assholes.
It really is.
Literally.
It really is. And it all comes back to this one bitch.
Yeah.
This
is so fucking amazing.
So, in Christian Science, between 1975 and 1995, there are 172 child deaths.
We were alive during this.
Yep.
Like, alive and, like,
I was almost a statistic.
That's right.
Because I had swine flu in 2008. I had my spine stepped on by a horse in 97. Like, man, I've almost died a couple times. It's maybe the thing that makes me go, yeah, maybe there's a God.
I'm laughing because I'm uncomfortable.
Instead of, like, he gives his greatest challenges to his best soldier, he's like, he gives you extra fucking HP because you're gonna go through some shit.
Jesus Christ, fucking accurate.
Like,
So one of the
let me just drop a couple extra points in her AC.
yeah.
right.
Oh,
So in 1975, though, 128 people were infected with measles, and 3 people died at Principia College, which is the Christian Science college.
Wow,
Your
history
uncle
really is sensitive.
My uncle was there at the time, and there are actually many members of the Christian Science survivors community, who were at the college at the time. It is like within the community of people who have left Christian Science and are surviving now and getting into therapy and coming out the other end. It is like an echo in their experience, because most Christian scientists grew up in Christian Science went to Principia. They either went to the upper school, which was like a high school, like a like sleepaway school, like you went like to their like academy and you lived there the whole year.
Yeah,
Boarding school.
Thank you. I couldn't think of the word.
I got you.
Or you went to the college. And part of that is because you could, like, had I remained a Christian Scientist, I could have probably gone to Principia for free. So a lot of people who are Christian Scientists went to Principia College to get their degrees.
You want to talk about some duplicity? Because if had that been me, like the second I got into like the boarding school, best believe I'm gonna walk my ass down to the hospital and be like, I need all the vaccines.
So
All of them.
interesting factor, a little like home, like personal anecdote. My parents, my mother was raised Catholic, my father was raised in the cult. They got together and got married, and then and they got married in April, and then we believe from like family lore, my mother got pregnant very shortly thereafter, and they went to a summer camp called Crystal Lake Summer Camp, a la Jason Voorhees.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Yeah.
that one. The most scary thing about that movie is the lack of vaccinations in the lake. But they were camp counselors at Camp Crystal Lake, and my mother had perhaps a miscarriage and was bleeding profusely, and my father rushed her to the ER, and they said, "You've had a miscarriage." And they went back to the camp to complete their work there, and were told in no uncertain terms, if you go to the doctor again for your follow-up, you will not be paid and we will fire you.
Whoa.
For seeking medical attention. And now I know this because my father trauma dumped it on my maternal aunt when he stayed with them once upon a time. Because we don't talk about doctors. We don't talk about illness. We don't talk about death, disease, or sin.
Never mind that your wife is hemorrhaging.
Yep. And now my mother would actually beg to differ. She does not believe that she had a miscarriage. My father does, but immediately in this conversation with my maternal aunt, like 180 and was like, well, actually, probably no, she didn't because everything was fine.
Gaslighting yourself, sir?
That is literally what Christian Science is. It is I have called it to my therapist the codification, the actual like religious codification of individual gaslighting and collective gaslighting. You are actively gaslighting yourself all the time that you even have a body. It is dissociation fully.
There is a reason that I cannot take anything either of your parents ever say any kind of seriously. My face is so loud when I'm in their house.
The one time you were just like, let's leave.
Yeah, I'm done. I'm
great.
done or I'm going to hit someone.
Yeah.
Just as a funny note, also, not to make light of that truly horrendous story, but I have to mention this for listeners at home. Jason Voorhees in the story at Crystal Lake dies because the campground members are all, like the counselors are all having sex, and that's why he attacks people who are having sex, but also because they're not watching the kids, and he drowns. So when they get his body back, if they got his body back, they would not have administered CPR, most likely because of their, like, or taking him to a hospital, unless they thought it was, like, legally liable. Either way, regardless, canonically, Jason Voorhees, Christian Scientist.
You know what? I'll take it. Yep.
No.
And still killing kids to this day.
So we had the terrible example of Lisa Sheridan, who died of pneumonia in 1967. And then in 1977, we had a 16-month-old, Matthew Swan, who died of bacterial meningitis in Detroit after his parents were persuaded to not seek timely medical care. They responded by founding the Children's Healthcare is a Legal Duty, or CHILD, Foundation in 1983. They 180. They went, oh, no medicine could have saved our kid, and they then tried lobbying to remove religious exemptions as former Christian scientists.
Not only would it have saved your kid, they wouldn't have gotten sick to begin with.
Correct.
Yeah.
Between 1980 and 1990, 7 Christian Scientist parents in the United States were prosecuted. There were 4 convictions and 2 were overturned. In 1988, 12-year-old Ashley King died in Phoenix, Arizona after living months with a tumor on her leg that had a 41-inch circumference. Her parents pleaded guilty to reckless endangerment. A prominent case in Massachusetts was the Commonwealth versus Titchwell in 1990, which saw the parents of 2-year-old Robin Titchwell convicted of involuntary manslaughter after he died of periodontitis.
I'm sorry. Can we back up to the poor little girl with
Yeah.
the 41-inch tumor on her leg?
Yeah.
Because Brian and I are over here like miming out how big that is.
Yeah, it's large.
It
is, to be clear, from my nose to my fingertip, that is 36 inches.
Yeah, because you said
this is a yard.
This is a yard.
My brain had a hard time.
Yes.
My brain had a hard time dealing with that. I was like, that's fucking crazy, dude.
Yeah.
That's larger than the child.
Yeah, she would have had just like low blood pressure.
Right.
Just from the amount of fluid that would have to go into it. God damn.
She was 12 years old.
That's large. That's like the size of her body.
Yeah. Yep.
Nuts.
And that was in 1988. It's not to say like cancer, we had no idea what to do about it. Like,
no, but if it's growing outwards, I have to admit that, you know, unless it's going through your like femoral artery,
right.
At the very least, they're going to cut that leg off, but you'll live.
Right.
Probably.
Exactly. So in 1990, the parents of 2-year-old Robin Titchwell were convicted of involuntary manslaughter after he died of periodontitis. That conviction was overturned. The appellate court ruled that the couple had reasonably believed that they could rely on Christian Science prayer without being prosecuted.
Oh my God.
In 1993, the church was held liable for the first time, which was unfortunately overturned on appeal, after the 11-year-old Ian Lundman died of hyperglycemia in Minnesota in 1989. The church sent a Christian Science nurse to sit with him, and doctors testified that he could have been saved by an insulin injection up to 2 hours before his death. The mother and stepfather were charged with manslaughter, but the charges were dismissed.
I have like very limited medical knowledge. And when you said that, I was like, "Is he diabetic?" And
Yep.
then like, yeah, he was diabetic. That's crazy. That's why I like looked at you to check. I was like, "Yeah, low blood. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's nuts. Like basic knowledge of medical care.
Yep. Yeah.
Would have saved this kid's life.
The mother and father were charged with manslaughter, but the charges were dismissed. The boy's father, Douglas Lindman, sued the mother, stepfather, practitioner, nurse, nursing home, and church, and he was awarded $5.2 million in compensatory damages, which was later reduced to $1.5 million and $9 million in punitive damages against the church.
Period.
The Minnesota State of Appeals overturned the award against the church and nursing home in 1995, finding that a judgment that forced a church to abandon the teachings of its central tenet was unconstitutional. And while the individuals had a duty of care toward the boy, the church and nursing home did not.
The fuck?
So basically, they are alleging that the parents at any time could have gone to the hospital,
Right.
and that your laws cannot say.
Under pain of excommunication.
Yeah, right. That's the issue with cults. Is
So,
that there's a
interesting
cost.
thing, there is no such thing as excommunication within the Mother Church, within Christian Science as a whole. No such thing as excommunication. Societal pariah? Yeah.
Yeah, shunning.
Same thing.
Yeah.
Right. You're not excommunicated from like from any form of Judaism, for instance. But if you're in a radical sect that shuns, or like the Mennonites have a couple of radical sects that like.
Yeah.
Other than just run spray, like your kids don't come back. There are certain things they'll shun you for, which is like you're not being excommunicated.
Yeah.
No one will ever speak to you again.
Yeah.
And if you live in a community that requires you to have other people helping, especially with the Mennonites, you can't do that on your own. You have
Right.
to have multiple people. It's tantamount to being made homeless overnight.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
I mean, if you were in Principia, for instance, your whole life's gone. Your
Absolutely.
scholarship's gone. Your housing's gone. Your
Mhm.
Jesus
Yeah.
Christ.
So now we're going to kind of, pause on that and take a deep breath and turn our attention toward vaccinations. Because one of the things about no medicine is also no vaccinations. I myself did not have any vaccinations until I was 23. And now 18 is when I left my parents' home, and I actually left the religion itself in my mind, because just as a hint to those who are looking at our current political scheme of everything, people do not leave cults out loud. People leave cults silently and invisibly until they feel really secure in the leaving. Because of that social pariah behavior, that experience of being like an outcast. And then once they're secure in their exit, then they say things out loud. So I left mentally at 10. I told my parents, because I got forced out of the broom closet by a silly experience at like 11 or 12. But I didn't get out until 18 when I moved in with Brian. And we were engaged at that point, but also very, very poor. So medical care, because we live in America, was not possible. So it wasn't until I had some level of financial security, largely through him, that allowed us to get me to go to get a tetanus shot, to get like the COVID shot, like that kind of stuff was only possible after I left my parents' home. So that said, Christian Science is not the only space that has ever like disagreed with vaccines. There are early objections dating back to the 17 and 1800s, where the anti-vaccination movement began with the introduction of the smallpox vaccine, initially in England in 1853 with the Compulsory Vaccination Act. Because if you tell any human they have to do something, there are going to be many humans who say, no, you can't make me.
Yeah, remember the mask mandate?
Mm-hmm.
It should also be said, just for a little bit of context for that, the smallpox vaccination was administered by cutting open the skin and then rubbing a bit of cowpox-infected flesh on the skin.
Right.
So it's a little more like visceral
Yeah.
than the today version. However, it was extremely reliable.
Yeah.
most people no longer got smallpox. Some people got it from the scrapings.
Right.
Super rare though.
Yeah.
And also like you were living in a society in which people got smallpox all the time, and then suddenly no one got smallpox.
Right.
And so it worked. Even the primitive version
Mm-hmm.
of a milkmaid saying she would never get smallpox because she had cowpox.
Right.
She was right.
Yeah.
The scrapings worked.
So then objections back in that time with the smallpox vaccine, they were based on concerns about safety because early vaccines could transmit other infections because you were doing an incision. And, they knew that this kind of virus existed, but not necessarily germs 100% because, all that.
And they didn't always clean their medical tools at the time.
Right. And then there were also arguments around personal liberty and bodily autonomy, as well as religious beliefs. And those religious arguments were that some people in the 19th century argued that disease was a divine punishment or act of God, and interfering with this through vaccination was unholy or unnatural. So in the mid 20th century, there was a shift. There were religious objections not formally recognized by the United States law until the 1960s. And this shift coincided with the passage of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which prohibited workplace discrimination based on religion and required employers to provide reasonable accommodations for, quote, sincerely held religious beliefs. There were also school mandates as a catalyst, because in the mid 1960s, as more states began requiring children to be vaccinated to attend school, there were lobbying efforts, notably from the Christian Science community, leading to the addition of religious exemptions. This was particularly seen in New York's 1966 law, which included a religious exemption clause and served as a blueprint for legislation in 48 other states, effectively making it national law. These sincerely held belief exemptions generally require an individual to demonstrate a sincerely held religious belief against vaccination rather than a specific doctrinal stance from a major religious institution, most of which support vaccination. So this then was also fueled by the discredited 1998 paper that falsely linked the MMR vaccine to autism.
That's right. By a fucking grifter trying to
Mm-hmm.
sell a 2-part vaccination. And that's the only reason he said that shit.
Right.
It's all lies.
And the use of religious exemptions has also expanded, sometimes serving as a loophole for philosophical or personal objections, which has led some states to remove those exemptions entirely, thank God. And also, I will briefly just step into my reality for a second, because guess what, bitches? I be autistic. And again, to reiterate, I was never given, frankly, medical care, but also any vaccines whatsoever. None of my siblings were. I have 3 younger siblings, and neither was my father, from whence the autism comes.
Now I have a quick question for you.
Hmm.
Did you ever take Tylenol?
You motherfucker.
Right.
Yes, but not until I was 18,
That's
because
right.
I wasn't able to access any medicine.
Which I think I gave you.
Yes.
When you cut your
I got-
finger open.
Yes. I got baby aspirin from my friend at 16 when I had swine flu from my boyfriend at the time, because I had a 104 fever and had to make a choice. Am I going to call 911 and bust this bitch open for child abuse and neglect and possibly get my siblings and I separated? Or am I going to possibly die? Because that is the reality that people are putting their children in this religious bullshit. And all of that comes to our current day in this moment, right now, in the state that we live in, which is Texas. Because we just passed Constitutional Amendment Proposition 15, which states the constitutional amendment affirming that parents are the primary decision makers for their children. Because this, along with all of the religious protections that we've been discussing, means that so many more children are going to die. Because doctors, school counselors, nurses, and therapists are now absolutely prohibited from intervening in the decision-making around a child's welfare, including where that may cause the child's death. And as my friend JL mentioned, it means that in order for an abused child to get the kind of care that would find the abuse in the first place, their potential abuser must sign paperwork allowing for that care.
I knew it was bad.
And it's all Mary Baker Eddy's fault.
This all on also the return of measles, which is very, which is something that we should have stamped out like several decades ago.
Mm-hmm.
But because the world couldn't really decide to mass provide measles vaccinations to the rest of the world.
We can't have a socialism.
Right. Well, hell, that's not even socialism. That's like
pragmatism.
Right. That's state security is that if I'm in a country that can't afford to give everybody a vaccination for, say, German measles, I reach out to wealthier countries and say, like, hey, we'll trade you X for vaccines. And they say, sure, we'll just give them to you because we have a fund for this.
Right.
And we even have the infrastructure, which is the WHO, the World Health,
the World Horse Organization.
Yeah, shout out to horses.
The World Health Organization.
Yeah, and a place where they all say Doctor Who jokes all the time.
I was literally just about to make one. Fuck you.
Doctor?
Wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey, vaccination bullshit.
Yeah, because they could, you know what I mean? Like, they've been shouting about this for years. They're like, there's a lot of things that we could basically annihilate.
Yeah.
We just need the go-ahead and the funds.
Yep.
And people just won't do it.
Yep.
And, like, I understand why, like, Ecuador doesn't do it. They don't have the money, right? But, like, if you ignore these kinds of things when they're hurting someone else, as Robert Evans from Behind the Bastards would say, it never stays isolated.
No.
It always comes after you eventually, especially with virals and diseases because they mutate.
And fascisms.
Yeah, and they become drug resistance, like fascisms. No, but they do. They mutate, and you get things like drug-resistant tuberculosis. That's not necessarily one you could stamp out, but, like, yeah, there's a lot of things that you
drug-resistant gonorrhea.
Yeah, that's the one we should have wiped out a while ago. It's like syphilis is still around. The cure for syphilis is penicillin. It's amoxicillin is $4.
Yeah, and
it should be gone.
That's them making a profit.
Yeah, the shit. I mean, it's literally super mold. Once you have it, you can just make endless amounts of super mold.
Yeah.
God damn it.
So anyway, that's my topic. That's the end of our episode, guys.
That's insane. All of this ridiculousness because one bitch was hysterical.
Pretty much. Yeah. If we had just given her, like, I don't know, a sideshow or something. Yeah.
It's a running thing because so many of these guys were, like, failed like, not religious people. Like, because in the same time that she comes around, there's quite a few movements to, like, reform religion at the same time that are making pretty good strides about, like, the care of children and stuff like that. So she's, like, in the weird side, right? And because there's other sides that are like, hey, maybe we should find, like, some homes for all these kids, and they're trying to solve a problem. But, like, in our episodes, like the maternity home and stuff like that.
We've got a home for your children. It's called the laundromat.
Right.
Put them to work.
There are so many, like, weirdos that just cannot fucking help themselves.
I don't know why I just broke Emily, but I did.
Yeah.
Are you okay?
Robert. I just learned that babies are not dishwasher safe.
Robert, we need to leave.
Robert, we need to leave.
What the fuck are you talking about?
It is a meme that has popped up, and I know not from whence it came.
It's a comic. It's a drawn comic of, like, I think a worm name that, like, is talking to a person, and the person is always Robert, and so it's like, Robert, this rock is pissing me off. And it's just like, it's just statements, but it's like someone has made it with a very, like,
flat, very monotone.
Yeah.
There's virtually no inflection in any of the
it's almost computer generated, like, not how AI generated voices sound, but like old school 1990s.
The tonal differentiations are done by punctuation
Yeah. Okay.
rather than like the lilt of a voice
Yeah.
to emphasize anything in particular. So
Trying
it
to save
comes
it.
across like the very first time that I saw the one that she's talking about, it was like 3 a.m. I was doom scrolling. I should have been asleep hours ago, but we all know how that goes. And it was presented to me as a sort of I don't know, in a video game format, characters from some game that I'm not familiar with, and it was just Robert. I've just learned that babies are not dishwasher safe. A pause, and it broke me.
Anyway, lots of kids have died. Lots of kids might die. And we really need to do something about that.
Yeah, that whole religious exemption thing needs to go.
It's fine if you're talking about whether or not kids eat pork at school, right? Because they're still getting nutrition. It's not like you don't feed them at all. It's it's not okay if your religion involves risking their life or a bunch of other people's life. Like in my mind, it's the same thing as saying like, well, we have a religious principle that says we give knives to babies, and you can't stop us from giving knives to our babies because we're the principal.
No!
Yeah, but it's like that's how I always understand it. Is that I can't give knives to your babies, but I can keep giving knives to my babies, even if the knives might evolve and then attack your babies.
Right.
Like,
Well, and it's what I honestly feel very deeply about this is that we treat children as second-class citizens at best. That we treat children in this country in particular as property and not as beings with rights. There was at one point in the Blue Berets, what the World Health Organization works for.
the UN.
Thank you, the United Nations. The UN had a vote on child rights multiple times, and the only country that voted no was us.
Is this something that we vetoed? Do you know?
I'm looking it up right now.
While you're looking that up, I'm
Yeah.
going to vamp for a second.
Go ahead.
There are a great deal of diseases that are, in fact, both preventable and curable that people don't necessarily know about. Syphilis is curable. A lot of people don't know that. It's just penicillin. There is also a drug called PrEP, PrEP, that will greatly reduce your risk with condoms, not just period.
Which is now not legal in certain states because of the HHS in the United States.
For what reason?
They're not. It essentially they are no longer making it available at pharmacies. Certain states have made it unavailable
Because it's largely for gay men.
essentially.
Yeah, so that's the thing, guys. AIDS doesn't just affect gay people. That is also something that a lot of people still believe. AIDS can affect anyone. People are born with AIDS.
Yeah.
PrEP largely reduces your risk of contracting it and is part of the treatment for AIDS. Outside of that, gonorrhea is definitely treatable. Everybody should know that. Again, it's just antibiotics. Yeah, it's really wild. There's a lot of stuff that, like, because our sex ed is so bad, and a lot of people say, well, children shouldn't be thinking about that. We shouldn't be teaching that to our kids. I went to school, Katie. I went to school when I moved to Georgia. I was 12 years old, and I went for 8th grade because I was on the younger end of class. There was a pregnant girl in our class.
Us too.
Right, because you were from Florida at the time, living in Florida?
Baltimore. We moved down here from... No, I'm lying. We moved down here from Richmond, Virginia.
There's this idea, because the people who are making laws are largely from the generation where people didn't necessarily have a lot of sex when they were, say, 15. So many people are put at a great deal of risk because they have a lack of sex ed.
Mm-hmm.
To follow that up, we also are currently, like, in legislation right now. They are trying to lower the age of, like,
consent.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, there are people apparently within, like, lawmaking power that want to marry
Children.
children, like 11 and 12-year-old. Why? Okay, first of all, these are the same people that are some of the loudest proponents for, oh, our children don't need that knowledge. They don't need to be thinking about that at age. Why are you thinking about fucking a 12-year-old?
So just looking this up, this is granted Wikipedia, but the United States has signed the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. However, it remains the only UN member state to not have ratified it after Somalia ratified it in 2015.
I do not understand. They make all this noise about protecting children.
Yep.
And they make, like, martyrs.
Yeah.
Out of, for example, trans people, because that seems to be who they're picking on the most right now.
Yeah.
And they use children as the shields. But they won't ratify this?
Right. Yep.
You will not take action to protect the very children that you are screaming need protection. You know why? It's because they need protection from you. I'm sorry. I'm very upset.
Well, and to that end, like looking at what the Convention on the Rights of the Child aims to do is to protect and promote the rights of all children around the world. It was the first international treaty to integrate all human rights in reference to children, encouraging them to participate in family, cultural, and social aspects of life. It emphasizes the right to survival, development, and protection against abuse, neglect, and exploitation. U.S. non-ratification of the document results in children having no standing in court. Several United States have no minimum age for marriage. Children with no standing in court cannot divorce until reaching 18 years of age. Babies...
Oh, because they can't represent themselves in court.
Right.
Their parents would have to have them essentially annul it.
Correct.
Through their parents. That's oh my god. Oh my god.
Babies...
Okay, so you and I are now on the same page with rage now.
Yeah.
Babies, children, and teens can be denied safe, life-saving medical help because of parental religious beliefs. The convention also addresses issues concerning education, healthcare, juvenile justice, and the rights of children with disabilities. And the United States won't do it.
What the fuck is wrong with us?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember the first time I ever heard. Sorry, Katie, I don't
No,
mean
you're
to bump your knee. The first time I ever heard about this was blood transfusions with Jehovah's Witnesses.
Yep.
And that was kind of like, essentially their argument was, well, like if this is a big car accident, you giving a blood transfusion to save the life essentially means that you're undoing. Their argument is basically like, if God wanted him not to die, it wouldn't have happened, or the injuries would have been so little that like no thing with blood was required. There's a biblical prohibition on doing things with blood. Again, though, like I stated before, these are largely by philosophies that don't really understand Jewish law.
Yeah.
They could not have possibly perceived a blood transfusion.
No.
And the reason why blood transfusions are fine in literally any Judaism is because this isn't a ritual.
Right.
It's not, you're not doing something with blood, and you're not consuming it. You're not consuming it just like for the hell of it.
Right.
You're consuming it for survival. This is also true of Islam. Islamic people can eat pork if they're starving.
Right.
There's no prohibition on doing something if you're going to die.
Yeah.
And so like they don't know what they're talking about. This is not like, this is an inaccurate view of why that rule exists.
On that, like most of these laws, as it were, these religious rules are thousands and thousands of years old.
Yeah.
Emphasis on old.
Yeah, they didn't have this shit back then.
Cars would have been magic to them.
They're magic to me.
Never mind your fucking cell phone.
Yeah.
Right? There's 3 cell phones on this table.
Yeah. We're carrying around supercomputers that are more powerful than what sent us to the moon in our butt.
Okay. It is on my butt. Certainly not in it.
Anyway.
It might not be in yours, but I have a very specific way of taking phone calls.
That explains the sound.
Yeah. The echo. So opposition to ratification of the Convention of Rights of the Child, these along with it comes mainly from religious groups, of course. These, along with many political conservatives, claim that the convention conflicts with the United States Constitution because, in the original language of the Constitution, treaties, quote unquote, referred only to international relations, military alliances, trade. This has apparently played a significant role in the non ratification of the treaty so far, with Senator Jesse Helms, the former chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, describing it as a bag of worms in an effort to chip away at the U.S. Constitution. Some Americans oppose the CRC with the reasoning that the nation already has in place everything the treaty espouses, therefore, it would make no practical difference.
Horseshit.
The idea that treaties wouldn't be held up domestically is kind of fucking dark.
What's got me real pissed off is that these same people that will cherry pick shit out of the Constitution and various religious texts. I'm just picking something out of my ass.
Yeah.
Your phone?
But it's not my phone.
Sorry.
But these same people, a gun is more important to them than a child's rights.
Yeah.
They're not like, you could make the legal argument of like, well, they don't pay taxes, so they have no representation in law. But like, that's a shit argument.
Yeah.
It's a downright fucking evil argument. Like,
Yeah.
it.
Also, I will just note this, just also, is that this child will eventually become an adult. And they're like that you were once a child who also didn't have rights.
Yeah.
Do you not feel empathy? And the answer is no, they don't. There was literally a study done that shows that conservatives tend to have larger amygdalas and less active prefrontal cortexes.
What?
Larger amygdalas, meaning that
Yeah.
they're more prone to the fight, flight, freeze response. They are also more prone to aggression, and they have less logical capacity and less emotional bandwidth. Literally, you can ask a person what their political proclivities are and find out how emotionally mature they are. And
To paraphrase, their brains are broken.
Because
yeah.
there's some of that.
And I would argue not to say like that this is like a permanent thing. It is to say it's trauma based.
Right.
That these people who have experience, because if we're talking very broadly, and I'm painting with a very broad brush, most people who are conservatives were also raised conservative. And so,
well, so I need to read this. There's sometimes when studies come up like this that I very much like need to observe.
I'll send you the link.
Yeah, because sometimes they do things like, we interviewed 500 conservatives. And where'd you interview them? We interviewed them at conservative colleges. Okay, so an 18-year-old didn't have a fully formed frontal lobe?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's no shit, right?
I want to talk to the 32-year-olds.
Right, like there's a certain amount of way that you can really fuck up some of these tests with study group, with specificity. And so like there's also an issue with like, when we say conservative, do we mean like a guy who votes Republican but is usually pretty like middle of the road, or do we mean like far right? You know what I mean? Like or somewhere in the middle. Like that's a super broad term in our political alignment, because we really only have two systems that can vote, right? So you'd be talking about 50% of the country. And at that point, you'd have to go like, okay, but what else is going on? You know what I mean? Like that's too large of a number to just be like if 50% of the country has subdued frontal lobe response, there are far larger things at play here. And like, you know what I mean? Like that maybe that's actually the norm, for instance. You know what I mean? Like, because you're talking about a large amount of people.
Like how they classify themselves.
Yeah.
Because, like, I had always considered myself until, I guess, recently. Like, I was pretty middle of the road. Like, I grew up in what I would classify as a conservative household. I'm pretty sure.
I have the answers real quick if you want.
Oh, yes.
This is from the .gov. Just to be very clear, this is from the National Institute of Health.gov. The initial study was done in 90 volunteers that were considered healthy by all other metrics. They were asked to self-select on a 5-point scale from very liberal to very conservative. So 1 through 5. No one chose very conservative, so they used the rubric 1 through 4. And then it was replicated in a excuse me, a replication study of 28 healthy volunteers to replicate it. And what it showed was that liberalism is associated with a higher level of gray matter, and conservatism is associated with a larger amygdala, which would indicate
Who's traumatizing
greater
these people?
them their parents. Like, that's my whole point that I was trying to make, is that the very people that ancestrally, like, we're looking at, like, the people who would have this issue with giving children rights, then produce children who have an issue with giving children rights, because I lived just fine. I'm okay.
Yeah, I can kind of see. Again, like, I need to read the whole thing.
Yeah.
Like, I know it doesn't really matter on one end because no one selected it,
Mm-hmm.
but that's kind of a problem in and of itself, is that your claim is conservatism causes this effect, but no one chose very conservative.
Mm-hmm.
That's a problem. What you're moving the line more towards the middle, and then
So
saying,
I don't disagree. I would
yeah,
just also say it's going to be really hard to get someone to voluntarily come and do a test who is on the very conservative end of the spectrum.
yeah, that's probably true, but that's like,
So the test, the summary here. Substantial differences exist in the cognitive styles of liberals and conservatives on psychological measures. Variability in political attitudes reflects genetic influences and their interaction with environmental behaviors. Recent work has shown a correlation, not necessarily causation, but correlation between liberalism and conflict related activity measured by event related potentials originating in the anterior cingulate cortex. Here we show that this functional correlate of political attitudes has a counterpart in brain structure. In a large sample of young adults, we related self reported political attitudes to gray matter volume using structural MRI. We found that greater liberalism was associated with increased gray matter volume in the anterior cingulate cortex, whereas greater conservatism was associated with increased volume in the right amygdala. These results were replicated in an independent sample of additional participants. Our findings extend previous observations that political attitudes reflect differences in self regulatory conflict monitoring and recognition of emotional faces by showing that such attitudes are reflected in human brain structure. Although our data does not determine whether these regions play a causal role in the formation of political attitudes, they converge with previous work to suggest a possible link between brain structure and the psychological mechanisms that mediate political attitudes.
and this is from the 1 through 90
Yes.
study.
1 through 90 study, and then they replicated it with 28 people.
It's still kind of hazy to me. I'm sorry, like, I don't mean to. This is not me saying like this is purposely wrong, but a sample size of less than 100, and then a sample size of
No,
a room full of people is
I
real
I
small.
very much agree.
Yeah.
Like that they're like having, like, you have the education as well of like how to read studies.
Yeah, this is kind of a bunk. This it's too small
It
for what you're
is
claiming.
it is very small, and also we are not going to get a larger pool right now. Like, this is
Yeah, without universal medical data,
right.
essentially, you'd have a real hard time doing this.
Hmm.
I feel you probably could. It'd be interesting to see if England has done a study about
Yeah.
this, because the NHS will allow a lot broader data
Hmm.
for things like CAT scans.
Yeah.
And so you could make a better, like, for instance, in Germany or England, you could make a better study out of this. Because at that sample size, it really matters where you're taking the sample.
Hmm.
Like, my gut reaction is to believe it, because you're essentially saying, like, people who like to fight lean more conservative. And I was like, yeah, that's probably fairly true. Unless you've met like an Abby Hoffman. You know what I mean? Like Che Guevara was very left. You know what I mean? Like Che Guevara, as he was like gunning down people against a brick wall, was very left. Had, there's a lot of those kinds of stories. So, like, as a person who's very left, like I want to believe that
Yeah.
I have more emotional context, but I also know that when I hear stuff about like a lot of conservative people doing certain things, it gets me very like hot.
Mm.
My friends might at work might notice that like you could tell me that Donald Trump did like walked on water, and I would,
Yeah.
he could do something miraculous, and I would immediately still not like him.
Right.
And so like that's kind of the pairing of that behavior.
Sure.
It's subjective on the what and the when
Yeah.
with a very small group size.
I think I would comfortably call this preliminary results.
Yeah.
This
like
is definitely
the beginning of a study rather
Yeah.
than like the end all be all.
I think also it's because like again there are those preliminary studies before this one that found correlation between like certain rubrics and tests, like looking at someone's face and like, is this an angry face or is this a concerned face? Like those kinds of things, and finding there being deficits in people who identified as conservative versus people who identified as liberal might just be the proclivity of people who are leaning liberal to go to therapy and get the education of emotional intelligence.
Yeah, that kind of issue with it is that you kind of have to say, like, is the correlation more accurate through a different statement?
Right.
Like, is it liberal versus conservative, or is it like people who go to therapy
Right.
versus people who
I don't know what the controls are.
Yeah.
If they did control for people who were in therapy or people who are not in therapy. Like there are lots of things along those lines that I
Yeah.
think need to be like controlled for in order to find a truly organic sample size. And again, it's going to be really challenging to get people of a significant level of conservatism into the room in the first place, because you're like, hey, I want to look at your brain, and they're like, no, you're gonna put chips in it, like
Yeah,
like,
yeah. This actually, I might clip this off for our thing that we do,
yeah.
because we do this thing where you have like one easy question, one hard question, one
Yeah.
easy question, and this is a pretty damn good hard question.
Yeah,
Of like,
yes.
what do you think about this study? And then we're very much on either side.
Yeah.
I was literally just thinking this is one of the most polite debates
Yeah.
that I have been to.
This
And,
is
like,
this is our marriage,
I
Katie.
know, but like I'm saying this in a complimentary way,
Oh, thank
like as you know, the sibling in the room.
Yeah.
Like it's refreshing
Yeah.
to hear two people on opposite sides of the opinion of a topic.
Yeah.
Speaking not only so politely.
I mean,
like,
we are being recorded.
I know. Obviously, like leave my TikTok slang out of this because my brain is made of goo.
Yeah.
But like this, I don't know. It's I'm enjoying myself just kind of sitting back and listening.
I'll take your compliment.
Like watching the volley.
I'll take your compliment, and you should listen to our other podcast that we're coming out with called Questions in Common, which is what we do this with. It's
Fucking period. Link me right now.
So yeah,
Please.
shameless plug for our other podcast.
Absolutely not. Do not shameless that shit. Like loud and proud. Say it with your whole goddamn chest.
So
please.
Questions in Common coming soon.
Yes.
All right, I think that's a good place to break, though. Thank you all for listening to my rant and ramble and to our subsequent disagreement.
The most polite disagreement I've ever witnessed.
Our mild, basically my need for meta data analysis,
Mhm.
and that's about it.
And my understanding that it's going to take time for that to get here, and I'm going to listen to what they have to say in the meantime.
Yeah, I am
But I love you.
admittedly overly cautious with data. Hey, this is Brian from Morbid Mondays. If you like the show, please consider stopping by at our Ko-fi account. That's ko-fi/Morbid Mondays. It's $1 a month, or just any one-time tip. And if you would like to help us fund our future endeavors or just want to show a little bit of appreciation, awesome. Thank you so much for listening. And if you don't. Whatever. Have a great day. Thank you so much for listening.